You know?
No, I'm too lazy. Anyway, so I am here at the Transcendental Meditation Center here in Mount Laurel, New Jersey with Barbara Barish, who's one of the directors here, to talk about Transcendental Meditation, which I have been practicing after doing the training here in July. So it's been about 9 or 10 months since we met. And Barbara, I'm going to brag about myself for a minute. Barbara was just telling me that she sees a change just kind of in me in that time. So that was cool to hear. But I do want to hear a little bit about, you know, for the audience, the basics of Transcendental Meditation and some of the benefits and your experience with teaching it.
Okay. Well, I've been doing TM for 46 years. What year is this? Yes, over 46 years, and I've been a TM teacher for about 43 years, over 43 years. So I started when I was in college, and basically started out of curiosity, but quickly started realizing benefits because when I was in college, you know, everybody is so tired in college, but I always felt like by 4 o'clock I would just like hit a wall. Like the rest of the day was just like blur, like just like push through it until it's time to go to sleep. And then when I learned TM, it was like I had a whole other day. You know, it's like, oh, I can really like be awake and stay alert and have energy past 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
And it was like double my day after I learned to meditate. So I wanted to learn more about it. I'm just a very curious person. And I decided to become a TM teacher. And we opened this center about 3.5 years ago. And what TM is a transcendental meditation, is a simple, natural mental technique that we practice 10 to 20 minutes twice daily. And the purpose of it is to make the rest of our lives better. And when we say TM is simple, we mean it's the easiest thing that you'll ever learn. It's effortless. We teach children 4 years old and up to meditate. We sit in a chair and close our eyes. It's completely silent. Everything goes on inside. We don't need any apps. We don't need any YouTube. We don't need a book. Just a watch, yes, or a clock. And we do it for the purpose of making the rest of our life better. It's completely natural, doesn't involve anything outside ourselves, because all of us have inside ourselves a reservoir of energy, intelligence, and creativity that we don't ordinarily use, because psychologists estimate we're only using about 5 to 10% of our mental potential. And all of us feel like we're under stress all the time. So there's a lot, most people feel like they have more to give than they're actually able to use and give, because it's all stuck inside. And what TM does is enliven those unused portions of the brain. When we say transcendental meditation, we're referring to transcending that 5 to 10% that psychologists estimate we use in our daily activity, and then transcending the thought altogether to get to a state of pure awareness, which is the most restful state of mind and body. And from that, we contact those reservoirs of energy, intelligence, and creativity and bring those out into our daily experience. So hell yeah.
But that's been my experience. I think when I first heard Transcendental Meditation, I had all of these sort of dismissive ideas about hippies and otherness going on. Like, it's like out there, which actually really doesn't bother me at all. I'm sort of open-minded to those things. But when I came to the first 2 courses that you and your husband did, first of all, you had a whiteboard, and it was, actually very scientific, sort of the conversation, right. Like you just demonstrated that there's a lot of research, scientists researching brainwaves, and the way that you introduced and talked about it was like a very practical, almost analytical presentation. Because I'm someone who, as a spiritual seeker, I initially came here for those reasons, like to further develop my meditation and spiritual practice. And I've found that it's actually just more of adding another discipline in my life. which accesses that, but it has almost, it's been more of a mental calming. And I've had the experiences of having increased insight into intuition, creativity, and I love what you talked about the 4 o'clock tired time, because I don't experience that anymore. And I'm someone who gets up at 4 a.m. I have to get up before my kids do in order to have the quiet part. And you know, I do still need to go to bed early, but like I do have consistent energy throughout the day, which is just awesome. Really.
Yeah. Well, when we first started teaching TM, we just had a lot of analogies and pictures and like that. But since the 70s, actually the first research was done in 1969, 1970 with somebody's doctoral dissertation on the physiological effects of TM. But since then, there have been over 400 peer-reviewed research studies on the benefits of TM for mind and body. And so they're published, peer-reviewed, and they show, like you said, physiological benefits. You know, so it's not just anecdotal, it's actually changing the physiology, changing the brain waves, making the brain more coherent, making the body less full of stresses and strains that have been stuck there. But you're talking about a spiritual practice. These actually, all of these benefits are almost a side effect of an evolving mind and body, of contacting, like you said, your intuition. That's the growth of we could say pure awareness, pure consciousness, or that spiritual level that's underlying everything else. That's actually the manifestation of the growth of spirituality in our daily life. But it's not a religious type thing. It's more of a contacting that inside ourselves which we can't see, and making it manifest as part of our daily experience. So it's the part of us that makes us who we are, despite what is going on around us. There's always changing and there's non-changing, and this is bringing the non-changing element of life into the changing element. And the non-changing is always stable and balanced and restful and peaceful, and so it makes the changing part, everything we do, more balanced and restful and peaceful and stable. So
it's absolutely been my experience. And one of the ways I've seen it is walking my dog, who used to want to attack bikes, other dogs. I mean, she's neurotic. And now we can walk by a dog that's coming out on an invisible fence, coming at us, and she has no knowledge that there's an invisible fence, and she's calm.
So your dog's been meditating too?
Yes. No, I mean, it's literally the other end of the leash is like good, you know? I mean, it's in those ways that I know that there's a difference. Because I live with a self-sabotager mind, you know, so I can't necessarily reflect on the differences as well. Like, that's why we haven't seen each other in a while, and, you know, you can see it because I haven't, you know, I don't have the perspective on but I can see it in those sort of, or being in an interaction with a family member that once would have been a big button pusher for me, and the buttons aren't there. But that thing, so Maharishi, the last time I was here, we watched a video of his, and we should explain who Maharishi is probably. But he kind of talked about that thing you were talking about the stable. Did he say source, or does he say? He doesn't say.
He talks about the source of thought. This is Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He's the founder of the TM organization in the United States. But TM is an ancient practice. It's thousands of years old, and but it was for thousands of years. It was taught just in India, teacher to student, and Maharishi brought it out to the world to make it available to everybody. Because he felt like the world needed peace and coherence. What was your question?
I think I was referring to the last video we saw, the one on love, where he was saying it's like what's here, and then I mean, he kept laughing at himself.
Funnily enough.
Funnily
yes.
enough, yeah.
All love was directed at the self. It's the level of the self, the large self versus the small self. Right, that
was what it was. Yeah. And that was reminding me of what you were talking about like the stable force versus the external, and then contacting and kind of almost like rewiring to live from that place as opposed to the small self. Right.
And it's not. We could talk about it as again, like as a spiritual construct or an abstract construct, but it actually is bringing the qualities of the meditative state into our daily experience. For example, when we sit to practice TM, automatically the mind begins to create coherent brain waves, coherent alpha brain waves. Alpha waves are associated with the aha moment or the epiphany. Also, athletes in the zone, it's associated with alpha waves, coherent alpha waves. It's the time when, even in the most strenuous activity, there's a sense of ease and orderliness and peace and well-being. And many people have tried to get this feeling, but when you try, you guaranteed not to get it. In TM, it's effortless and automatic that the brain starts to create these coherent alpha waves, and so people, when they come out, they feel more focused, they feel, like you say, more intuitive, just contacting, able to do less and accomplish more because there's not so much static in the brain. And each time we meditate, every time we come out of meditation, the brain maintains or retains some of that coherence, and the more we meditate, the more of that coherence is maintained. At the same time, the body gains a state of deep rest. The rest has been found to be twice as deep as the rest we gain in sleep, and some of that also is maintained. So in meditation, we experience a state of restful alertness, and outside of meditation, we're bringing those qualities of restfulness and orderliness of mind and body into our activity, as shown by brainwave studies and studies of physiological changes. So it's not just an abstract. It's not on a level of the intellect. It's a level of actual physiological changes. Right. It's
not this nefarious sort of. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, I actually have the experience of it feels different sometimes when I'm in the mantra, which is given during the training. Which is in 3 stages. The 3rd stage is when we have the ceremony and the mantra introduction, right?
Yeah.
I think that happens.
Well, no, the first, to learn TM, there's an introductory talk in which we discuss the benefits of TM. And then we talk about how it works and why it works and what's happening. And then for people who want to learn, there's a personal interview. So you fill out a form, they'll meet with you. And because TM is taught, it comes from a tradition called the Vedic tradition, which is from India, but it's not Indian. It's kind of a universal knowledge of kind of that experience of restful alertness, the experience of pure awareness, the experience of the personal experience of that which underlies all of our consciousness. That's what the Veda is about, and the TM comes from the Vedic tradition. And Veda means knowledge, and because it comes from this tradition, every TM teacher, every certified teacher teaches TM in the exact same way. And it's the same way it's been taught for thousands of years when the knowledge has been passed down. It's an oral tradition. We don't write it down. And when you come in to learn, because you mentioned the ceremony, because we teach in the same way it's been taught for thousands of years, every teacher performs what we call a ceremony of gratitude at the beginning of the instructions. When you come in for personal instruction, the student just witnesses, but the teacher just does that, first of all, to say thank you to the tradition for the knowledge, but also to remind ourselves that we are instructed to teach in the same way we've been taught, in the same way our teachers have been taught, and like that. So it maintains the purity of the teaching which guarantees the effectiveness of the technique.
And as a student, it made it feel like I was making a commitment to myself and to be a part of the tradition. So, but I will say, someone who's practiced different types of meditation, you know, for probably 6 or 7 years, trying to get on the horse of meditation, then falling off, and you know, I've tried mindfulness techniques, different organizations actually in the area of religious and otherwise, but this, since starting TM the 9 or 10 months ago, first of all, I've stuck with it in a way I haven't with any other practice, and that's because it's something that it gives pretty quickly in terms of the spaciousness and effectiveness of my use of time, the clarity of my presence when I'm not in meditation, and I was saying I can actually feel the activation of the different, I mean, my brain actually, I can sometimes feel it in a different way. That's weird. It's almost like up here. And I have had the experience, we talk about this a lot, of coming out of meditation too quickly and then getting a headache. So, and they, you know, when you talk about like the alpha brainwaves and things like that, I mean, I can testify that it's an experience. It's a legitimate. It's a legitimate experience.
And that's the latest research has been on brainwave studies. And what they found is that new meditators and people who've been meditating 40 years more during meditation have the same brainwave patterns, same coherent alpha brainwaves. From the first minute that you sit down in there and we teach you to meditate, you have that alpha brainwave pattern that 40-year meditators have. The difference is that the longer you practice TM, the longer those alpha brainwaves will show up in your activity.
Okay.
So what they find is that the alpha brainwaves become superimposed over your other brainwaves. So there's always that level of coherence there. As like if you've been meditating, 2 months, maybe it'll show for 10 minutes after meditation. Like a year, maybe like an hour after. I don't know, and everybody's different. Everybody's experience is different depending on how much stress is in each individual and what the body needs. But I know myself, my background also, I'm a school psychologist. I have a PhD in school psychology and a graduate certification in clinical neuropsychology. So I love the brain. I know all about the brain. And in my training, someone brought in a biofeedback machine, and she asked for volunteers to get hooked up with the cap, and that measures the electrical output of the brain. And so I volunteered, and she says, I'm going to teach you how to create alpha waves. So when you close your eyes, every time you have an alpha wave, the machine will go ding, and then you have to figure out how you did that, so you create it again. When I closed my eyes, since I'd been meditating at that point, that was like 2001 or 2 or something. So I'd been meditating like 30 years at that point. And so I closed my eyes automatically. I started meditating, and the machine started going ding, 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 ding.
Cool.
And she asked me what was happening. And she said, what are you doing? And I opened my eyes, and I started telling her about TM. And while I was talking, I had my eyes open. I was no longer meditating. The machine continued to go ding, 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 ding. And at the end, she got a little printout, and she said, typically people have like maybe 15, 16 dings, and I had like 673.
That's amazing.
And I had not even been meditating after a first couple of minutes, because she asked me what I was doing, and I started talking. So I was projecting this, I don't know how long the brain, I don't know how long I could have dinged that machine, but
right, because as you become self-conscious of it, it might actually do it.
I don't know if they, if I talked to her for 2 hours, if I would have continued dinging the machine, but at least for that 10 minutes, I still had that coherent alpha. So that is really the goal of meditation. Is we have the experience in meditation, but the goal is to have that experience outside of meditation as well. And So it's made for the active person to make your activity better.
Cool. All right. Well, it was so great to talk to you. I like to keep these interviews brief, and plus, now you know about Transcendental Meditation and the fact that you can come to, what is it? Where are we? The Village Plaza?
We are Village 2 Shopping Center in Mount Laurel. It's 1200 South Church Street, Mount Laurel 08054. But we're not like here for people to just stop in. If people
That's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah. If people are interested, they could go on the tm.org website or email me at bbarish@tm.org, which is BBARRISH@tm.org, and I'll send you information. And
join the club. All right. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right.
All right.